So I've called this actually proposed changes to Islandora. We started talking about defaults, but it morphed into something that's a lot bigger and a lot more overarching. So this is part of the process. This is part of the consultation. I'm hoping to get public feedback today. It could be here, it could be through email, whatever. But yeah, we want to talk about what we're planning on doing. So a little bit of background information. Yeah, this started as modularizing Islandora defaults. The leadership group had that on their roadmap. They wanted to go to kind of a solution pack idea. But when we looked at the way that Drupal 8 uses configuration to hold all of like the ways that you do things and the ways that features work, it turns out it's really, really difficult to provide something like what solution packs were in Islandora Legacy. Right now, we're in Drupal 9, we're so much more integrated with Drupal that anything that we say, hey, here, you can like set up your site like this, and it can do these things, like we're just using Drupal features. And normally those are things that an individual site gets to customize. And has to be able to customize. So we had this tension between trying to ship a product that you could start using, but also making sure that like you need the flexibility to change it and make it work the way that you want to. But that means you're taking what we gave you and you're completely reworking it yourself. And so we're moving forward into this world, and that's going to change a little bit of the way that we kind of envision the Islandora modules working. So leadership group wanted to modularize Islandora defaults, asked me to scope that out. What would that look like? I recommended several changes that really didn't involve solution packs. Those changes went around to a few people, and some folks from Discovery Garden were able to suggest some more really core changes to Islandora itself. I was trying to limit myself to defaults. They were willing to go a lot further. So I thought if the community is willing, I think this is a great opportunity. I think we have a good chance right now to do this kind of work. So the current proposal, the current like working document is the one that I just put into today's agenda. I've called it version 3. If you're interested, there are links in the introductions that go back to the other versions of the document that had been prepared. And the plan for this is that the leadership group wants this to happen fairly quickly. So we'll put out a call for proposals and is willing to pay for this work to be done. I know, Drupal has had the idea of like bounties on bugs. I'm not sure, I don't think this will exactly work that way, but we'll a call for proposals and you could submit if you're interested in doing some or all of this work. So some of the problems and pain points that we are hoping to fix with Islandora include like center around Islandora defaults. Finding it was very difficult to maintain when the metadata interest group wanted to change the way a form looked. That was at least a months long process, and getting the config changes back into a pull request took a lot of combing through everyone. When you install Islandora defaults, it doesn't install cleanly. And it could be that there have been other modules installed that have changed the configs slightly relating to the configs that are in defaults. But you'll see that like features tells you, oh no, changes have been made. And so trying to filter out, are these changes that we want to commit or are these accidental changes that are just incidental, really impacted the ability of the community to make defaults what we wanted it to be. And that seems really unfair. Defaults is not code, it's all config. And so the idea of that is that it's super simple. You don't need to be a programmer to be able to edit it. But the way that it had been set up as a feature was getting in the way of that. We had a lot of sub-modules, not a lot, maybe a handful. in many cases, they really should have been independent modules. And not having that means if you want that feature, you have to install the dependent module. If we can separate things out so that different functionalities become independent, they're a lot more flexible to use, they're a lot more straightforward. So we're thinking of going in that direction in general. The second thing is that Islandora has a weird modeling scenario where we enforce certain things for objects to be Islandora objects. It's not very clear. And it's often not entirely, it's not ideal either. The proposal from Discovery Garden was to make Islandora independent of modeling. And that's a really, like, fundamentally a change to the paradigm that we've been using. I think it's possible, and I think that it could be a very powerful switch over, but it would mean that we have to change some of the ways that we do things. So also we have a number of modules and repositories within our GitHub repository that the community is maintaining, but I'm not sure are actually being used in the community version in production or by anybody. So the Islandora themes and the install profile, while they contain a lot of really great code and features, it's in a way that is difficult for the community to continue to support. So we're looking for alternatives to that, trying to find a different future for those bits of code and features. And again, like talking about how our modules, like some of them are independent of each other, but a lot of features are packed in to the Islandora core module that really are supposed to be optional. So we're looking for ways that we could maybe generalize these functionalities and make them more useful to other Drupal users. Repositories are websites. We're not that special. A lot of the problems that we face are probably problems that other sites face as well. So if we were able to share more of our code with the broader Drupal community, we think that'd be a good thing. So our plan is to break stuff into independent modules. This will, increase usage. If we can, publicize it, especially move them to like github.org or drupal.org. That way we can become more better Drupal citizens, be part of that community, and get some help with, bug fixes and patches and maintenance and stuff. This will also allow repositories to pick and choose which features they want. We're hoping to simplify the stack a bit because we have a lot, like, as anyone who's looked into like how ISLE works, there's a lot of different components that need to be, that we try to run as part of an Islandora, and they all need to be working in harmony with each other. And that's great. It's like an enterprise grade scalable system, but we think that there's also, it would also be great to have an offering for people who don't need that much juice, who have, smaller resources and aren't going to be putting as many things in, so that they can be supported as well. The idea of, instead of simplifying the stack is providing a starter site rather than what Islandora defaults is right now. Probably it'll look just about the same, but it'll come in a different format. And the idea is that you start up, you load up this site. We give it to you, you customize it, and it's yours. It's your site. Your config is your site. You own it and you get to do whatever you want with it. And my suggestion is to look to Drupal. We started building Islandora the way that we did a couple of years ago, and Islandora 8 and 9 architecture has changed and improved since then. There could be a lot of really great solutions out there that we haven't seen yet that would simplify the need for the code that we're writing. And we want to serve metadata needs because, as the MIG has experienced, simple Drupal fields often don't cut it for the kind of metadata that we have been entrusted with and need to carry through in our repositories. So we want to have a focus on that as well. So in the proposal, I outlined phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 are some fairly simple changes that we think can be done pretty imminently. Phase 2 are like the longer term overhauls of how the code works and would be by necessity breaking changes. So those secondary phase 2 changes would require like migrate tooling and things to help you smooth that transition. Phase 1 includes refactoring submodules out to be their own modules, refactoring Islandora defaults to become just a starter site that you install, potentially reimagining how we select viewers, and this would just be a change within Islandora defaults. Proposing to deprecate the install profile and themes, and have an inventory and scrape what we can that is useful into the kinds of modules that those features might work in, and to scope out and plan phase 2, which is much larger. So the phase 2 structure changes that we've outlined so far are to change the node media direction, become more like normal Drupal if we just attached media in like reference fields, media fields on nodes the way that a normal Drupal site would. A lot more features would be available to us. We wouldn't need to use EVA views anymore. Things would be a lot more simple. So we're proposing this switch. Again, of course, we're not proposing to enforce how modeling looks. So if you would prefer to have your media have a field on it like they do right now that points to the parent node, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. But we would, need to, and the reason we need to scope this out is that there are a lot of features and code in Islandora that understand that relationship between node and media. And so we may need to create something or adapt things or, choose other ways of doing those features so that node media relationship is not ignored. We want to simplify the stack. So this is the idea that if you want the microservices and the active MQ, you can have that. If you don't, there's a simpler way. There has been some work already, actually in phase 1 as well. UTSC has done a lot of work with Islandora Lite and has some frameworks that could be really useful for all of this, including their simplified stack includes advanced queue, which is a Drupal module that allows you to queue derivative generation. Refactoring Islandora itself into independent feature-based modules, because right now the core Islandora module does a lot of things. It includes viewers with transcripts. It allows you to sync to Fedora and to Blaze Graph. It includes the media syncing to Fedora via Fly System. It gives you that the media tab and the members tab. So it's really like it has baked in that idea that you'll do collections in a certain way. But none of those necessarily, need to all be there in one module. So we were thinking of making those more featureized. Not featureized in the Drupal sense, just feature-based. Metadata solutions. So there's a little bit in the version 3 proposal that talks about what we kind of like to support. The idea is that it's really difficult, like as a metadata repository person, you probably have different collections or different sections of your repository that have different metadata needs. So being able to develop different metadata profiles for them. And that includes like what fields are available, are they repeatable, are they mandatory, what kind of data can you put in those fields, and then how is it, how is it displayed and such like that. Those things, need to be able to happen. And in Islandora Legacy, we could do that. In Islandora 8 or Islandora, it's much harder. You could make different content types, potentially. You could try to make different form and view modes and use those, potentially. But the architecture isn't really there, and it doesn't, and those are all solutions that were designed for Drupal web content, and metadata content ends up being edited and stuff a lot differently. So metadata profiles, metadata forms, something that we had in Legacy was the ability to have a really slimmed down form that your student assistant could come in and just edit the description field or whatever. Don't have to see the 15 other fields that your metadata professional is going to be caring about. So they have the ability to do forms, metadata profiles, and finally, import, export. So if you need to show your content as Dublin core so that it can get harvested, we want a way to do that. We also would love a way for you to show it as mods if you would like to, or show it as mark if you need to import it into, an ILS system. We've got several modules in the community right now that kind of do this, but they're not in a flexible way. It's like OAI DC is just Dublin core and it's just for OAI. There isn't a way to, just see that. And so it'd be great to also explore like the RDF module ecosystem right now. Currently in Islandora, we use RDF. So we already do this in some ways, right? We have the OAI DC as an export format of our metadata. We also have the RDF the JSON LD that we put into Fedora as an export format of our metadata. But they use entirely different architectures, and they're really not they're not harmonized. And there's a lot of weirdness that goes on, particularly with JSON LD, like a lot of hooks that come in as that JSON LD is being processed and allows you to overwrite things. So hopefully, cleaner import and export of your metadata. That repository managers can trust that when we export our metadata, this is getting our data out of Islandora. Investigating the Drupal Contrib module ecosystem. I think that that's really important, that we need to be on top of what's going on with other Drupal modules, because we are Drupal users, and it's a huge community with tons of work that I think we're paralleling in a lot of ways. And again, moving our modules over to Drupal.org, I think that would be a good idea. And I initially had it over in phase 1, but I was told this is going to be much more of a process. And so if we are to do this and to do it, right, we'll be changing a lot of the Islandora developer workflow to use Drupal.org's own code system rather than GitHub's. It might not be possible to do this with all of our modules if they have testing requirements that use other systems than just Drupal. And so we would need, as part of the scoping out of phase 2, we would identify the modules that can and can't be moved over there.